Today we're going to talk about how to repair silicone. So if you have a mannequin or a task trainer or something else and it incurs damage somehow, we're going to talk about a little bit of the way of thinking about that repair and then how to approach doing that. So welcome to this episode. My name is David Shablock and your host of This Old Manikin. We love silicone, but the problem is it can get damaged. So then what do we do? And why does it get damaged in the first place? So if you just take a nice pool of silicone like this and just take a little pair of scissors, put a nick in it, it's got a little bit of damage. But the problem is if there's no structure in it, then that run just goes like that. We have to stop that tear or stop that damage before it gets a lot worse. Well, how do we do that? Okay, well, first off, my go-to is Sil Poxy by Smooth On. It's got a 5-minute working time and it cures in 12 minutes. And usually these are all at 73 degrees. Now this doesn't actually say that, and I have a feeling it is because it's the type of silicone it is. This is not a platinum cure silicone like a lot of the Dragon Skin and EcoFlex series. This is more of a condensation cure or an acetic cure. It actually has acetic acid that evaporates off of it in order to firm it and to cure it and make it actually usable. Also, you don't have cure inhibition on this, which is kind of cool. It comes in a paste. Get it from Smooth On or Reynolds, my favorite supplier. And this is how we do it. Now, opposed to some of the other glues and things like that, we talk about prosthetic adhesives. And those are temporary adhesives. And all of our what sticks to silicone, usually when we're talking about this, we're talking about a temporary stick. But we want this to be more permanent. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the damage and the types of things that get damaged in mannequins. So one of them I get a lot of people asking about is faces. So somebody goes in there with a very aggressive innovation, and this guy gets torn straight like this, straight through there. So I guess, well, how do I repair that? Okay, so the bad answer is, can I repair it? Yes. But the amount of effort that it's going to take to tear it again is going to be less, even with some of these things we're going to talk about. So some repairs may only get you down the road a little bit, and you should probably think about, replacing that skin another way. If it's a damage like that, you might be in trouble. Sorry about that. But if we talk about something like this guy, okay, so this is one of the sim babies that Laerdal produces. And I will tell you, this is one of the early skins. They have since addressed this. This is not a problem anymore. But if you look at this guy's little tear, right there, we've got a tear. And I'll tell you what, that's a fix we can address. We'll talk about that. But we're going to repair this guy. And this is my wonderfully beautiful Gamard hand. And I've had this for a long time. And it's been sitting there getting ready for this video here, because when I got it, it was in perfect condition. And it's just not anymore. So what happened to this? Well, I have a son was a lot younger when he did this. This is probably 4 or 5 years ago. And I may have left in the same, like time zone or, area, 10 square miles, an X-Acto knife, and some precocious little child may have just took it upon himself to make these modifications. But that means you get to see how to repair this. So that's probably what we're going to do, is approach this. If we talk about repairing anything, you break something, why are we talking about this? This is pretty easy. We just want to glue the edges and call it a day, right? Well, the problem is with silicone, it's not going to be a really strong repair, and we want to give this the best chance we can. So First thing is approximating the edges and making sure that we glue that together. But then we want to give it some sort of structure. How do we do that? Okay, well, this is where things like power mesh come into play. And if you're not familiar with power mesh is that polyester, like I said, mesh material. A lot of people use that in prosthetics, suture pads. It's a really good structure that we can put in our silicone. But it's not perfect. And the reason is, yes, there is actually holes in this, but I got to really stretch it out to see those holes, and it's really, really small holes. Now, this is a polyester spandex blend, and therefore it's not natural, doesn't have a lot of fibers. So there's nothing for the silicone really to bind onto. It'll stick to it, but it's not going to actually grab a hold of it really, really well. So that's why some of the other meshes that you can find are pretty good. Now, this is kind of a jersey mesh. It's got some bigger holes. That wouldn't be bad if that's all you can find. But a lot of these other materials have bigger holes in them, and that gives more clamping area and more force to do. After we've approximated the injury, or, glue the things back together, what I like doing is taking it off. So I'll actually take all the skin off of this and then glue that on the underside. If this were the skin flipped, what we're going to do is larger than the area. Now, this is a little bit ridiculous, but I'm going to actually glue that down really well. I'm going to embed as much of it in there. So I'm probably going to actually butter it on under it first. Then I'm going to place this in and I'm going to put some of this in there. And if you look at your newer skins by all the major manufacturers, they're doing this. So anytime there's a central venous access or there's some sort of port access, flip that skin over and you're going to see a mesh. It's a nice wide mesh. You know why? Because it works. Then, once you've glued the two sections together, once you've given it structure underneath, then we can talk about like a beauty coat or a detail coat. And that's not really the aim of this video, so we're going to kind of glaze over that a little bit. But we're going to talk about the basics of it. So first off, let's just get into actually doing a repair with this. You got to make sure that you're cleaning all of your silicone before you glue it. So what are you cleaning it with? I personally like to use acetone, but you could also use naphtha. But you need to make sure, well ventilated. I prefer you would use a respirator, protect your lungs, protect yourself. So any points you're going to glue together, you want to make sure you clean all that off. If there's any oils, debris, silicone oil, or anything like that on the top, this will allow it to make a better contact and a better securing repair. What we want to do is obviously get the damaged item there, and we want to get our Sil Poxy. And for this, remember, we're just gluing the two sections together. So what you want to do is maybe get yourself a palette. A disposable palette would probably be easier to work with and a lot less cleanup. Because even this, once you put it on there and it dries, it sticks. How do I know? I've already shot all this video once and I had some problems with it. I had to throw it all away and then I had to clean this up afterwards. It was a bear. Paper palette might be okay, but you'll end up getting it flipping up and that sort of thing. It'll be a pain. So I'm just going to go with my metal palette again, just to make it easy. Okay. And then I've got a tube of Sil Poxy that's already open that we're going to try to use, because once you open this, you're introducing air, you're giving a way for things to evaporate. This stuff will start drying out. And it's not cheap, but it's great. So don't open it until you need it open. I used to, in my last lab, actually bag it in a couple Ziplocs afterwards. That helped pretty darn well, so I double baggy these things. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to just put some of this epoxy right on here. Pull the dried up goober out of there, and then get some on my palette. I'm just going to take my spatula here and get a little bit of Sil Poxy. Just kind of butter it into the wound. I'm going to start at one of the ends, so I don't want to make these tears any worse, but I want to get as much or as close to the end as I can and get some in that injury there. And you might have to do this twice. You might glue most of it together and then go back and do a little more. But don't be stingy with it. Get some good on there, and then you can get some off later on. But what I'm going to do is get it on there. I don't like to waste it, but I want to make sure I've got enough on there, so I'm going to get a good stick. I recommend only doing one of the cuts or one of the damage points at a time. Focus on that, then go on from there. Step this aside a little bit here, and I'm just going to kind of make sure it's nice and covered. So right now it's not even touching. So all I'm doing is making sure I've got enough in there that it's going to work. So from this point, I want to make sure there's not a whole lot sticking out, but I really don't care because I can cut that down later. I really want to make sure I get these two stuck together well. So now I can sit there and I can hold them, but I don't have a lot of patience for that. So what can I use to just kind of hold things together that I can peel off later? Well, I know that like if we're talking about the covers for the touch points on like Nursing Ann, Nursing Kelly, I use Coban. I super glue them down and I Coban it up and I walk away. But for this, what I'm going to do is use the 3M kind removal tape. Usually in medicine, when it says kind, it's a secret word for silicone. I mean, double check yourself. But, so this comes with a lot of the Laerdal manikins. And it sticks okay. It's not my favorite, but it sticks okay. But for this, it's great. Because what I'm going to do is, I'm going to have it hold it for me, so I don't have to. And again, I'm not being stingy about it. So I'm getting enough that it's going to stick. So what I'm doing is I'm bringing it together. I'm actually pushing it up a little bit so it kind of puckers. And then as I'm flattening the tape down, I'm really kind of pushing to make sure that those are as close as I can make them. Is it going to be perfect? No. The only thing perfect would be a new skin. So I've got this little guy over here, and I'm going to see if I can't just get him going too. I got a little bit more Sil Poxy. That's already starting to firm up, so I want to move. Then what I'm going to do is before I leave, anywhere between the tape, I'm just going to kind of rub a little bit off. Just saves me extra time later. Flatten things down, blend it with my finger a little bit, just so there's not a whole glob up there like that. That looks pretty good for now. What we're going to do is we're going to allow this to set up and then take the tape off and see what we got from there. So come on back here in a little bit. Welcome back. So we've given enough time that this should be all set up, and now we're going to remove the tape off here. See what we got. If I pull like that, like I did, there's a chance that I could open that back up. So kind of pull at an angle, kind of like this. That's what we've got. It's a little bit above, so we could probably peel this off, get it a little bit below the surface, and clean that up. Also, we can go over it. What we can do to do the detail coat is we actually take Sil Poxy and thin it down with either Novox, which is definitely preferred, or something like naphtha works. It's just a lot more caustic. You have to have more ventilation. Both you need to use a respirator and be good to your lungs. Both you need to use in a well-ventilated area. But you thin it down, you can actually tint it, and then you can work with layers to actually kind of sculpt in a lighter color matched version of the Sil Poxy to kind of hide that better. If you're working with something like a life cast or something you've painted up that has more color, then what you'll also need to do is after you do your detail coat that gives it that top structure and blends it all in, you're going to need to go in and do painting with silicone painting. That's a whole nother topic for another video sometime. This looks like we did pretty good. I mean, it's a rough one, but it's pretty good. Up. I missed a couple of slashes right there. So what we could do is peel this off and then do the detail or the structure coat underneath it. I'm probably not going to do that with this one. If this were my piece, because it's got a hard plastic core, I don't have to worry about it coming under stress. There's no pull that's going to actually pop that back open. But I got another piece that does need a little bit of help. And that's this guy. Okay, well this is just plaster, so we're not going to fix this with silicone. But if we take out the mother mold, we now have a leg mold. So this is a life cast I have poured hot clay into, and to get a life cast, I did it too thin, and when it was too hot, it was kind of distorting. But the biggest thing was when I pulled it out. So if you look here, I've got my registration points. And so I cut these in here. And these are to make sure that I have the most minimal seam possible. And when I actually hold this into the mother mold, it holds it pretty nice. The problem was I didn't actually stop, or I didn't actually put enough down here. And so I used to keep that connected so it wouldn't tear. Well, this time I forgot about that because I haven't actually used this in a while, and I clipped that right off. Well, the problem being is then, silicone being silicone, it just ran with a tear. And whew, boy, did it tear. I mean, that is all messed up. And there's even a dimple in there. But what I did do is I kept this in here, or I put it back in, because what I'm going to do is use this to hopefully save this silicone life cast. It was off my wife's leg. We actually almost hurt her knee or damaged her knee in the process, and learned some lessons on that of what not to do. But I'm not going to ask her to do this again. So it's really important that I save this guy. So we're going to use a lot of the same processes, but we're going to speed it up just so that you guys can see how we do it. What I'm actually going to do is grab some T-pins, because I don't care about this clay. It wasn't a good pour, and I don't care if I damage it, but I'm going to use that to kind of hold everything together and then glue things in. Be right back. So if you don't know what T-pins are, these are what they are. They're just a sturdy pin in a T-shaped. Let's tack this guy in. All right, so we've got everything secured. I've actually got my Sil Poxy already kind of curing, so I got to move quick on that blob, but I'm going to probably do this in a couple of sessions. Now, what you should be thinking is, well, you just put a whole bunch of holes in that silicone, so you're making places that could tear. Yes, but I'm going to actually reinforce it with mesh on the outside. So that's how I'm getting around that. So using T-pins on something, you're going to want to glue those or patch those or have some sort of structure because you're putting holes. The first way I showed you, definitely more optimal. So let's glue this guy up. We've got everything glued up. We're going to let that cure as well, and then we'll come back and put the securing mesh on. Now that we're all dried up, we're going to remove the T-pins carefully. And see how well that edge was able to stick. Looks like we did pretty darn well. Got some little things that are sticking up. I'm going to take these scissors and kind of cut them as close and as flat as I can. Don't want anything really sticking up. Make that mating surface flat. All right, looks pretty darn good. So now what I'm going to do is clean that up with a little bit of acetone, and then we're going to go with the structural layer. Make sure that's all nice and clean, especially of dog hair. Check it one more time, make sure everything's nice and flat. I've got these pieces here cut already into strips. Kind of measured it, saw that that's going to work, so we're going to do this in little areas at a time. Make sure that we get that impregnated, bonded around, and then stuck down. You want to get it as close and as flat to the surface as you can. So I'm pressing down to really get it to bond. What I'm going to do is, for the most part, just get it tacked down. Really impregnate the material so it has a nice place to grip it. And then finally, off camera, I'm going to throw another coat on it just to seal it all down. And there we have it. Should be a pretty darn durable repair. Maybe if you guys are interested, let me know. We can do a top coat sort of blending layer as well as a separate video. But this is more about the structural repairs. This is more of, oh God, I need to make this work and keep going. Like this. I don't want to have to life cast my wife's foot again and possibly hurt her knee anymore. So I need to make sure I saved this. Whether it's a mannequin, a task trainer, or something like this, these sorts of ways of doing this should be able to work on all different sorts of silicone. And make sure you know it's silicone. Other materials have other sorts of repairs. Make sure you know the material you're using first. Hope you enjoyed it. Keep following us for more content coming soon. Thank you for watching this Old Manikin. My name is David. Goodbye.